She smells like chlorine again, Daddy. That's what my daughter said at 7:42 on a Tuesday morning in March, mouth full of Cheerios, her hair still in the crooked braid I'd put in the night before. I was pouring coffee. My wife was in the shower. My daughter is 6. I asked her what she meant. She shrugged the way little kids shrug when they've already moved on. She said, "Mommy, when she picks me up from Nana's, she smells like the pool." My wife had told me, the night before, that she'd been at a book club. I didn't say anything. I finished pouring the coffee. I walked to the living room window and watched a plow scrape the last of the Milwaukee slush off our street, and I felt my ears start to ring. Not loud, just a thin whine like a TV left on mute in another room. 3 weeks later, at 11:14 p.m. on a Wednesday, I stood in our garage holding a second padlock I'd found taped to the inside of her gym bag. Not a lock, a key, to a lock I'd never seen. And I understood, standing there in socks on the cold concrete, that the woman upstairs in our bed had been a stranger for a long time. But to explain how a 6-year-old with milk on her chin cracked open a 17-month affair, I have to go back to the beginning, to the woman I met at a Habitat for Humanity build in 2010, to the wedding in her grandmother's backyard, to the nights she used to call me her safe place, because she was, once, she really was. My name is Rhea. I'm 37. I'm a cartographer for the city of Milwaukee, which means I spend my days making maps nobody looks at until a water main breaks or a new bus route goes in. I like it. I like the quiet of it. I like knowing where things are. My husband's name is Adam. He's 38. And before I tell you what he did, I have to tell you what he was, because otherwise none of this makes sense. We met at a Habitat build in Racine when I was 24. I was hammering a stud into a doorframe crooked, and he walked over and didn't say anything, just tapped the bottom of the hammer handle twice, which was the kindest correction I've ever received from a man. We had coffee after. He had a gap between his front teeth and a laugh that came out his nose. He told me his dad had been a bad drunk, and that the only thing he was afraid of in his life was becoming him. I married him at my grandmother's house in Door County in the fall of 2012. My grandmother, who raised me from 11 on after my mom got sick, walked me out to the oak tree in the backyard and held my face in both her hands and said the things she always said when something mattered. "Rhea, people show you who they are on the easy days. Believe them on the hard ones." I didn't understand it then. I do now. We had Nora in 2018. She came out screaming and has not stopped having opinions since. She's the reason I know my husband was, for a long time, a good man. He used to rock her at 3 a.m. and sing her a made-up song about a raccoon named Gerald. He used to pack her lunch with a little folded napkin that had a drawing on it. A star. A boat. Her name in bubble letters. I had a second pregnancy in 2020. We lost him at 19 weeks. We named him Elliot and buried a little box under the maple in the backyard. Adam dug the hole himself and cried so hard his shoulders shook, and I remember thinking, this is the man I'll be old with. This is the one. Here's the thing I want you to understand before I tell you what came next. I was not blind. I was not stupid. I was not one of those women who had no idea. I knew my husband, and what happened is that at some point, without telling me, he became a different man and kept wearing the old man's face. That's the part that breaks you. My grandmother died in 2021. We inherited a little money, not a lot, enough to pay off the Subaru. I took up swimming at the Y in Bayview that summer because the grief was sitting in my chest like a brick, and chlorine is the only thing that ever made my lungs feel bigger. I remember the first morning I went, the smell hitting me through the double doors, that sharp chemical green smell that isn't green at all but feels green, and the way the tile under my bare feet was always a little gritty, like the building was slowly shedding itself. I loved it. I loved the echo of voices off the wet walls, the slap of a kickboard 3 lanes over, the squeak of wet rubber sandals on the concourse, the muffled thump of my own heartbeat when I pushed off the wall and my ears went under. I loved how the air in the locker room was always warmer than the air outside it, how it held the ghost of every woman who had ever walked through in a towel. For a year, the pool was the only place my grief stopped talking. I'd come home with my hair still wet, smelling like a laundromat that had lost an argument with a swimming pool, and Adam would kiss me on the temple and say, "There's my fish," which is a thing I used to think was sweet. I didn't know, the afternoon I signed the family membership form, that I was writing my own horror story. That's where Adam met her. Remember the pool? It becomes everything. For about a year after my grandmother died, things were normal. Or what I called normal. Adam and I were both working. Nora was in preschool. We were tired in the way parents are tired. We had sex about twice a month and didn't talk about it. I thought that was marriage. Then, sometime in the fall of 2022, small things started moving. The first was his phone. For 12 years of marriage, his phone lived face up on the kitchen counter. In October, it started going face down. I asked him about it once, jokingly. He said, "The screen is bright. It was bothering me." I accepted that. Why wouldn't I? The second was the swim bag. He'd always swum once a week, casually. Now it was 3 times. 4. He started keeping a second towel in the car. He started showering at the Y instead of at home because it's faster. He bought new trunks, dark green. I hated them a little for no reason I could name. The third was a name, Devon. He mentioned her once at dinner, like an afterthought. "Devon says the new lap clock is broken." I asked who Devon was. He said, "Coach, swim coach at the Y." I said, "I didn't know there was a coach." He said, "Yeah, they added master's lessons." He didn't look up from his plate. Devon. 3 letters that would eat my life. Fourth was the shampoo. He switched brands. He'd used Suave for a decade. Suddenly, it was some cedar and bergamot thing in a black bottle that cost $22. When I teased him, he said he was sick of smelling like a dad. I laughed. I actually laughed. I remember picking up the bottle one morning while he was at work, unscrewing the cap, smelling it. It smelled like someone else's husband, like a man in a magazine ad leaning on a railing. It did not smell like the man who had sung about a raccoon named Gerald at 3 a.m. The bottle was heavy in my hand in a way that cheap shampoo is never heavy. I screwed the cap back on and put it back exactly where I'd found it, angled the same way, label out, and walked downstairs and made Nora breakfast. That was the first time I lined something up exactly the way I'd found it. It would not be the last. 5th was the sex. It stopped. Then it came back weird, performative, apologetic. He started kissing my forehead after, like I was something he had to make up for. 6th was Nora. My daughter, who had always reached for him, started reaching for me. Not dramatically, just the tilt of a kid's body when she knows a room has gone a little cold. I'd see her watch him from the couch sometimes, her forehead wrinkled, like she was trying to solve a small math problem. 7th was the smell on my wife. Wait. I'm sorry. Let me go back. I keep getting ahead of myself. Here's the thing. I didn't let myself see it for a long time because the alternative was unbearable. Because when I started catching the edges of it, the first thing my brain did was flinch. Men who accuse their wives of cheating are a punchline. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself grief does things. I told myself I was projecting because my dad cheated on my mom and she never got over it. That Sunday in March, 3 weeks after Nora said the chlorine thing, I did one small thing. I didn't tell Adam. And that one small thing broke everything open. I bought an AirTag. Not to follow her, I swear. I bought it because she'd lost her keys twice in a month and I thought I was being helpful. I slid it into the inner pocket of her gym bag while she was in the bathroom. I told myself I'd tell her about it that night. I didn't tell her that night. On Monday, she said she had a 6 p.m. book club at her friend Priya's house. Priya lives in Wauwatosa. At 7:11 p.m., I opened the Find My app on my phone, half curious. Mostly just to confirm my own paranoia was nothing. The AirTag was at the Residence Inn on North Mayfair Road. I sat on the edge of our bed, in my socks, holding the phone in both hands like it might jump. Nora was downstairs watching Bluey. I could hear the theme song. My ears started ringing again, that thin TV left-on whine. I watched the little blue dot for 41 minutes. It didn't move. Then at 7:52, it started moving toward Priya's house. She got to Priya's at 8:14, stayed for 14 minutes, and drove home. She walked in at 8:51 smelling like chlorine and a man's cologne, and she kissed the top of my head and said, "God, Priya will not shut up about her renovation." I said, "How was book club?" She said, "Boring. I love you." I said, "I love you too." I did not sleep that night. Not for a minute. I lay next to her and listened to her breathe, and I thought about every single thing she had said to me in the last 6 months, and I ran it all through a different filter, and piece by piece, my marriage came apart in the dark. The next morning, I did 3 things before she woke up. I opened a new email account she didn't know about. I forwarded the location history from the AirTag to it, and I called Priya. Priya is not a close friend of mine. She was my wife's college roommate. She picked up on the 4th ring, and I could hear a toddler screaming behind her. I said, "Priya, I need you to answer one question, and I need you not to tell Adam I called." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Okay." I said, "Has Adam been to book club with you this year, even once?" There was a pause that lasted the length of my whole marriage. She said, "Rhea. Oh God, Rhea." I said, "That's all I needed. Thank you." I hung up. I walked downstairs. I made Nora waffles. I kissed my wife on the forehead when she came down in her robe, and I said, "You look tired, baby." She said, "Book club ran long." I said, "I could tell." That was the first lie I told her back. It wouldn't be the last. I want to tell you what the next 11 weeks looked like, and I'm going to try to tell you honestly, because the thing nobody talks about with this kind of discovery is how calm you get. Not brave, not strong, calm. Like a surgeon. Like there's a job to do and crying is for after. I started a folder on my secret email. I called it Pool. I put everything in it. Location pings, screenshots, credit card charges, receipts I found in the wash, a Residence Inn loyalty point statement I intercepted because I was the one who got the mail every day and she didn't know I'd seen her handwriting on the envelope. Adam, the first thing, was my wife's swim coach. Let me correct myself. Let me say it right. My wife's name is Adam, and the man she was sleeping with was her swim coach. Let me try again. I keep scrambling it. I'm sorry. My wife is Adam. The swim coach was Devin Keller, 31 years old, lived in a 1-bedroom in River West, had a wife named Marisol and a 2-year-old son named Tio. There. That's right. I had to say it out loud. I learned Devin's name in week 2 by doing something small. I went to the Y on a Saturday morning and signed up for a drop-in swim lesson. The girl at the front desk pulled up the schedule. I said, "Is Devin teaching this week? Someone recommended him." She said, "Devin Keller, yeah, he's got the master's group Tuesday and Thursday nights." She pointed at a bulletin board. His picture was on it. Curly hair, the kind of jaw that gets a man in trouble. I looked at the picture and I thought, I thought, that's the man my wife is ruining our family for. I thought, he has a weak chin. I said thank you. I signed up for a beginner class with a different coach. I swam 50 laps that morning without stopping, and my chest felt enormous. And I went out to the parking lot afterward, and I sat in the Subaru, and I cried for 11 minutes with the heat on. Then I drove home and made grilled cheese for my daughter. Week 3, I found the second phone. It was a cheap Android, black, inside a Tampax box in the bottom of her gym bag. $32 at a gas station, is my guess. I didn't open it. I photographed it where it sat. I put it back exactly as I'd found it. I was learning something about myself, which was that I had a patience I had not known I owned. Week 4, I called the first soft question. We were eating tacos. Nora was at Adam's mom's house. I said, "Hey, weird question. Were you ever at that Residence Inn off Mayfair? Because somebody told me they thought they saw your car there once and I laughed at them." Adam went still. Not dramatically. Just the way deer go still. Then she said, "Who said that?" I said, "Dana, from work. She said she saw a Subaru like ours." Adam said, "Lots of Subarus, babe." I said, "That's what I told her." Adam said, "You're not getting paranoid on me, are you?" Her voice went gentle. "You've been off since your grandma." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I worry about you." I said, "I know. I'm sorry. I think I'm just tired." Adam said, "You're too in your head sometimes, Rhea." That was gaslight number 1. I wrote it down that night. Week 5, she started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. One night around 2 a.m., I got up for water and stood in the dark of our bedroom doorway and watched her sleep. She had her hand curled under the pillow like she was holding a gun, like the phone was a weapon she couldn't let go of, even unconscious. And I thought, she's more afraid of me finding out than she is of losing me. That was a piece of information I filed away. It changed how I moved. Week 6, I met with a lawyer. Her name was Carmen Ocampo. She worked out of a small office above a Vietnamese restaurant on National Avenue, and you could smell the pho coming up through the vents, and her whole waiting room had that warm anise and beef broth smell that I will now always associate with the end of my marriage. She had silver streaks in her hair, and she didn't smile when she shook my hand, which I appreciated. She looked at what I'd gathered, and she said, "Wisconsin is a no-fault state. The affair doesn't matter for the divorce. It matters for you. Do you want custody?" I said, "I want my daughter." She said, "Then we do this quiet. We do this slow. We do this right." Week 7. Devin's wife called me. I want you to understand I did not reach out to her. I am telling you now, on my honor, I did not. She found me. She had found a pair of women's underwear in Devin's gym bag that were not hers, and she'd gone through his phone while he was in the shower, and she'd found text threads with a woman saved as mechanic. The mechanic was my wife. Marisol, smart woman, started with the phone numbers in the mechanic thread, reverse searched one, got a dentist office that confirmed an Adam was a patient, and from there she found me on Facebook. She called me on a Thursday afternoon while I was at work. I took the call in a stairwell. She was crying. She was also very precise. She said, "Is your wife's name Adam?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Does she drive a silver Subaru Outback, plate ending in 4B7? I said, "Yes." She said, "I think we need to meet." We met at a Panera in Brookfield, halfway between our houses, on a Saturday morning. Teo was with her mother. Nora was at a birthday party. Marisol was 29 and had the kind of exhausted eyes you get from a toddler and a liar living in the same apartment. She brought a folder. I brought mine. We sat there at the Panera and we showed each other everything, and at one point she laughed, a real laugh, and said, "He told me your wife was a client, like, for swim lessons. He said her name was Diane." I said, "Adam told me Devin was a man named David. I never met him." We sat there for 3 hours. Marisol is a good woman. She's a dental assistant. She grew up in Waukegan. Her English has the faint music of her mother's Spanish in it. She said something that afternoon I will remember the rest of my life. She said, "They think we are small. Let's be small together. Let's be so small they don't see us coming." We had a plan by the time the manager came over with more coffee. Week 8, I got into the Tampax phone. I did this by watching Adam type in her passcode on her real phone one night. She uses the same 4 digits for everything. Our anniversary. The date we got married, which she apparently could not be bothered to change even for her secret cheating phone. The phone had 43 voice notes from Devon, videos, hotel receipts going back to October of 2022, a running text thread that was 17 months old. The first message, from October 14th, said, "I shouldn't have kissed you at the lap clock. I can't stop thinking about it." The most recent message, from the night before, said, "Tomorrow, same room. I'll bring the wine." Tomorrow was Thursday. I forwarded everything to my email. I put the phone back. My hands didn't shake. I don't know why. They should have. Week 9. Adam slipped up. We were at her mother's house for Easter lunch. My mother-in-law, Helen, is a sweet woman who once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her daughter. Adam was at the kitchen island helping Helen plate the ham, and I was in the hallway coming back from the bathroom, and I heard Helen say, "Quiet. Honey, is everything okay with you and Rhea?" Adam said, "Mom, don't." Helen said, "You've been different." Adam said, "Mom, I'm handling it." I stood in that hallway and I felt the last small piece of hope die in my chest, because Helen knew. Not all of it, maybe, but enough. Helen had seen her daughter lie to my face at a holiday table and chosen not to tell me. I walked into the kitchen and smiled and said, "That ham smells incredible, Helen." Helen could not look at me for the rest of the afternoon. Enabler number 1. That same night, after we got home, Adam sat on the edge of the bed and said, "My mom thinks we're in a rough patch." She was pulling off her earrings. She wouldn't look at me. I said, "Are we?" She said, "We've been distant, Rhea. You have to admit that." I said, "Have we?" She said, "I feel like I'm living with a roommate sometimes." I looked at her in the mirror. I said, "I feel like I'm living with a stranger." She froze for half a second. Then she smiled, the small, practiced smile, and said, "See? That's what I mean. We need to reconnect. Maybe a weekend away, just us." I said, "Yeah, maybe." She kissed my shoulder. She went to brush her teeth. I sat on the bed and stared at the closed bathroom door and thought, she just asked me on a date to cover the fact that she's already on one. That was gaslight number 2. I didn't need to write it down. I was not going to forget it. 2 nights later, she tried a harder version. She came home from a late meeting at 10:40 p.m. and sat at the foot of the bed and said, her voice wobbly on purpose, "Rhea, I need to tell you something." My whole body went quiet. I thought, here it comes. She said, "I think I've been depressed. Like, really depressed. I think I need to see somebody." I said, "Okay." She said, "I've been a bad partner. I know I have. I'm going to do better." I said, "Okay." She said, "Will you be patient with me?" And I looked at this woman I had loved for 12 years, this woman who had come home smelling like a stranger's bed 3 hours ago, and I understood what she was doing. She was front-loading an excuse. She was building a structure where, when I eventually caught her, she could say she'd already started to tell me. She had warned me. She had been sick. I was the one who hadn't listened. I said, "Of course I'll be patient. I love you." She cried a little, neat tears. She went to take a shower. I heard the water start and I thought, she's washing him off right now, and then she's going to come back in here and sleep against my shoulder. She did. I let her. That was gaslight number 3, and it was the one that taught me she was not going to stop on her own. She was building the getaway car while holding my hand. Week 10. I moved money, not to hide it, to protect it. Carmen walked me through every step. Half of what we had went into an account in both our names that required 2 signatures to move. Nora's college fund, which my grandmother had started, went into a trust in Nora's name with me as the only signatory. The Subaru title, which was somehow only in my name, stayed where it was. I also did one other thing. I called a locksmith and asked how much it would cost to rekey a house. He said $240. I wrote it in my planner under a day I'd circled in red. April 27th, a Thursday. The Thursday. Week 11. I sent the invitation, not to Adam, to Marisol. I texted her. April 27th, Residence Inn off Mayfair, room 214, 7 p.m. Bring Teo's grandma to watch him. Wear something you can walk out of there in. She texted back, I'll be there. Thank you, Rhea. I texted back, don't thank me yet. Here's how it went. On Thursday, April 27th at 6:52 p.m., I parked my Subaru 2 rows over from Adam's Subaru in the Residence Inn parking lot on North Mayfair Road. Marisol was already there, in a Civic, with the engine off. I got in her passenger seat. She handed me a cold bottle of water without saying anything, which was kind. I drank half of it. At 6:58, Carmen Ocampo pulled in a black Lexus, and parked 1 spot down. She had her paralegal with her, a quiet woman named Jen, and a folder of documents 1.5 inches thick. At 7:04, a Milwaukee County process server, whose name was Ray and who I had paid $400 in cash, pulled in behind us. At 7:06, the 5 of us walked into the lobby of the Residence Inn. I had called ahead. I had told the front desk I was Devin Keller's sister and that I needed to leave him a surprise. I had a cupcake in a box. I had his room number. The girl at the desk smiled and said, That's so sweet. He's in 214. We walked up the stairs together. Carmen first, then Ray, then me, then Marisol. Jen hung back with the camera on her phone already rolling. I knocked on the door of 214. I said in a voice that sounded like somebody else's, Housekeeping, I have extra towels. There was a rustle, a pause. The door opened about 6 inches. Devin Keller was standing there in boxer briefs and nothing else. His curly hair was wet. Behind him, on the bed, my wife was sitting up pulling a sheet across herself. The bottle of red wine was open on the nightstand. An unopened box of condoms was on top of the TV. There was a little battery-operated candle flickering on the desk because apparently they thought this was romantic. Devin's face did something I will never forget. It collapsed into itself. Adam, behind him, saw me over his shoulder, and her mouth opened, and no sound came out. Here is what I want to tell you about that moment, because this is the part I have turned over in my head 100 times since. I thought I would feel triumphant. I had planned for triumphant. I had rehearsed, in my car, in the shower, at my desk at work, the version of me who would walk into that room with a cold, sharp thing in her chest and plant a flag in the wreckage. I thought I would feel the way people feel in movies. Loud, hot, righteous. I had even practiced a sentence I thought I might say, a sharp one, the kind of thing a woman in a courtroom drama says before she turns on her heel. I didn't feel any of that. I did not say the sentence. The sentence had been written for somebody else, somebody younger, somebody who still thought a marriage ended with a speech. What I felt, standing in that carpeted hallway that smelled like vacuum cleaner and somebody's microwave dinner, was very small and very quiet. The hallway lighting was that terrible yellow-green that hotels use, the kind that makes everybody look sick. A vending machine was humming somewhere down the corridor. I could hear the elevator ding on the floor below. Small sounds. the sounds of an ordinary Thursday that other people were having, elsewhere, without grief. I looked at my wife's bare shoulder in that strange bed, and I remembered her bare shoulder at our wedding, the little constellation of freckles on it, the way my grandmother had adjusted the strap of her dress before the ceremony and then patted her cheek. I felt a grief so clean it almost wasn't painful. It was just a fact. It was the fact of a door closing. I watched her face go through 4 expressions in a row: surprise, then calculation, then panic, then something like shame. And I thought, oh, you are a stranger. You really are. The person I married is not in your body anymore. Maybe she hasn't been in a long time. Maybe the person I had married had been slowly replaced, room by room, like a house renovated while the owner slept in it, and I had kept paying the mortgage on a building that wasn't mine. And the part that surprised me most was this: I did not hate her. I thought I would. I had practiced hating her for 11 weeks. I had rehearsed contempt the way some people rehearse love. But standing there, I felt only a tired, enormous tenderness, the kind you feel for a house that's burning down that you used to live in. You don't hate the house. You just can't go back inside. You stand on the lawn and you watch the windows go orange and you remember the wallpaper in the hall. Some part of me, the small animal part that had been on alert for 17 months, finally put its head down. It was over. Whatever came next would be hard. But the waiting was over. And the waiting, I realized, had been the worst part. Worse than knowing. Worse than this. My ears were ringing again. The same thin whine. Only this time I understood what it was. It was the sound of a life ending on schedule. Ray stepped forward. He said in the calm voice of a man who has done this hundreds of times, "Devin Keller, you've been served." He handed Devin a thick envelope. Devin took it because his arm was already up. Marisol stepped forward next. She didn't yell. She said, "Teo's asleep at my mother's. Your stuff is in 4 boxes in the garage. The locks are changed. Don't come home." Adam made a sound. Not a word. A sound. Then I stepped forward. I didn't walk into the room. I didn't need to. I looked at my wife, sitting in a strange bed with a strange sheet pulled up to her collarbone, and I said the only sentence I'd rehearsed. I said, "Nora's at my mother's. Don't come home." And I turned around and I walked down the hallway. Behind me, I heard Carmen say, in the flat voice of a professional, "Adam, I'm your wife's attorney. These are the filing documents. You'll want to find your own representation by Monday." I heard Adam start to cry. I kept walking. In the parking lot, Marisol and I stood by her Civic for a long minute, not saying anything. The sun was just starting to go down. The sky over the mall across the street was pink. I noticed that. I remember thinking, the sky is pink, and I'm about to drive home to my daughter, and I don't have a husband anymore. All 3 things were true. The sky kept being pink. Marisol hugged me. She said, "You okay to drive?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Text me when you get home." I said, "Okay." Then I drove to my mother-in-law's house because Helen had Nora. Helen opened the door and looked at my face and started to cry. I said, "Helen, I know you knew. We're going to talk about that later. Right now, I need my daughter, and I need her overnight bag, and I need you to not call Adam for the next 12 hours. Can you do that?" Helen nodded. She could not speak. Nora came running down the hallway in her socks with a juice box. She said, "Mommy, Nana let me have 2 juice boxes." I said, "That's so cool, baby. Let's go home." I buckled her into her car seat. I drove us home. I made her mac and cheese. I gave her a bath. I read her "Where the Wild Things Are" 3 times because she asked. She fell asleep with her hand curled around my thumb. I sat on the edge of her bed in the dark for a long time, and I thought about my grandmother saying, "People show you who they are on the easy days. Believe them on the hard ones." Adam had shown me, on the easy days, a woman who sang to our baby about a raccoon named Gerald. On the hard days, she had shown me a woman who could lie to my face at Easter lunch with her mother watching. Both were real. I had to believe both. But only one of them got to live in this house. Here's what happened after. In the first 2 weeks, Adam slept at Helen's. She called me 41 times. I didn't answer any of them. Carmen handled all communication. Adam sent a 7-page letter about how she had lost herself and how the affair was a symptom, not the disease. I gave the letter to Carmen without reading past the first paragraph. Carmen said, "Standard. They all write this letter." In the first month, Devin's wife filed for divorce in Waukesha County. Devin was fired from the Y when Marisol emailed HR a 9-page document. Devin moved back in with his parents in Kenosha. Marisol got full custody of Teo. Marisol and I text every couple of weeks. She is doing better. Teo is doing better. She is thinking about nursing school, which she paused when she had him. In the first 3 months, Adam's affair, stripped of the hotel rooms and the secret phone and the adrenaline, died the death. All affairs die when they become ordinary. Devin, without his job, without his wife, without the thrill, was not the man Adam had imagined him to be. He was a 31-year-old guy living with his parents in Kenosha. Adam called him, according to Marisol's later texts, 16 times in 1 week, and he blocked her on the 17th. In the 4th month, Priya sent me a long text apologizing for covering for Adam. I did not respond. She is not my friend. She was never my friend. She was my wife's friend who decided at some point that my marriage was not worth a phone call. Helen, to her credit, came over the weekend after the confrontation and sat at my kitchen table and wept and said, "I should have told you. I should have told you, and I was scared of my own daughter." I said, "Helen, you can still see Nora, but you and I have to build something new, and it's going to take time." She said, "I understand." She calls Nora every Sunday. It's enough. In the 6th month, the divorce was final. I got the house because I could buy Adam out of her half with what my grandmother had left me. Adam got the 401k she'd contributed to and half of our savings. We share custody of Nora, 50-50, which is more than I wanted to give her. But Carmen said it was what a judge would order, and fighting it would hurt Nora. So I gave it. Every other week, Nora goes to the little apartment Adam rents in Shorewood, and every other week she comes home. The first time Nora came home from Adam's, she was 4. She was 6. Sorry, 6. She came through the door and dropped her little backpack and said, Mommy's apartment is small. Is she sad?" I said, "I think she's figuring some things out, baby." Nora thought about it. Then she said, "She doesn't smell like chlorine anymore." I said, "Oh?" Nora said, "She quit swimming. I think she got tired of it." I kissed the top of her head. I didn't say anything. In the 10th month, I went back to school. Part-time. I'm working on a master's in urban planning at UW-Milwaukee. It was the thing I'd parked in 2012 when we got married and bought the house, and I took the cartography job because it paid, right now, and the master's would have to wait. It waited long enough. In the 11th month, I went on my first date. His name is Theodore. He teaches earth science at a middle school in West Allis. He has kind hands and a laugh that comes out his nose, which I thought would be a problem, because it reminded me of Adam. But it wasn't. It's a different laugh. It's his. On our 3rd date, he kissed me in the parking lot of a bookstore. It had just started to rain. His hand was at the base of my skull, in my hair, and I felt something in my chest unclench that I had not known had been clenched for 17 months. I did not go home with him that night. But I wanted to, and the wanting was its own small miracle, because for a long time after Adam, I thought the wanting was gone forever. It isn't. It was just waiting for a safer room. It's 7:42 on a Tuesday morning in March now, 1 year exactly since Nora said the chlorine thing. She's 6.5. She's eating Cheerios. Her hair is in a crooked braid I put in last night. I am pouring coffee. The house is quiet. My phone is on the counter, face up, and nobody in this house is going to text me a lie today. Nora looks up from her cereal and says, "Mommy?" I say, "Yeah, baby." She says, "I love our kitchen." I say, "Me too, Bug. Me too." My grandmother used to say people show you who they are on the easy days, and you should believe them on the hard ones. I used to think that meant watch out for the bad ones. I think now it means something else. It means believe the good ones too. When somebody shows you on a Tuesday morning at 7:42 in a crooked braid with milk on her chin that she loves you, believe her. Build your house around her, lock the doors behind you, and if the person you married ever smells like a place she said she wasn't, ask your 6-year-old. They know first,